All right, so we're starting right now.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Harriet Harris, the chair, and we are calling this meeting to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Hello, everyone. Stand up, face the flag, and begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. You may be seated.
Before we get all the way started, we have the honor of having Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley here with us. She'll be addressing us right now. Here she comes. Y'all prepare.
Hi, how are you? Good to see you. All right. Good morning, Democrats. Good morning, family. And I really do mean that. We're one human family, one community. Our freedoms and our destinies are truly tied. I do want to take a moment, and I think we should just applaud ourselves that we made it here today. You know, you never know what strength people are having to summon, mentally or otherwise, just to arrive at a space. It is exhausting navigating ableism. So let's just acknowledge that and commend ourselves again. We made it here today. I want to thank our esteemed chair, Carrie Evelyn Harris, for your leadership and for the invitation to join you today. I want to again thank each and every one of you. You are activists and leaders in your own right. You have been on the front lines of the fight for disability justice day in and day out, and it is an honor to join you in this work. When I think about what motivates me to arrive at this moment and this space, I don't think about all the inequities and the disparities and the injustices. Yes, this is a movement for justice, for disability justice, but there is a lot of joy in this movement. And that is what motivated me to be here today, to be in community with all of you, and to be joyful in the pursuit of justice. We are joined today by so many people that I see as mentors, as teachers, as pace setters, calling the question that has changed the conversation and advanced the work. I grew up in an organizing household, actually here in Chicago. This is the city that raised me, for those of you who don't know that. I'm very humbled and proud to be a congresswoman representing the city of Boston now, but this is the city that raised me. I grew up in an organizing household. My mother was a tenants' rights organizer for the Urban League of Chicago, and so taught me early on about that work with a capital W. And that is the work that each and every one of you do every day. And that is the work that is about the fight for our shared humanity and our collective freedoms. So thank you for doing that work. We're also here in the pursuit of justice, as we are joyful in that pursuit, to celebrate progress like the Americans with Disabilities Act, but to recognize that this historic victory is not enough, that the ADA was always the floor and not the ceiling. But still, we can clap on that. We want to acknowledge decades later our foremothers, our forefathers, our non-binary siblings of the movement, and affirm that this fight is not over. Coretta Scott King, one of my sheroes, who I think every day history is learning more about her contributions. But Coretta Scott King once said that freedom is never really won. You earn it and you win it in every generation. And that is exactly why we need disability justice at every level of government, because we are still doing the work of earning and winning our freedom. And Vice President Kamala Harris proved herself to be just that, helping make voter registration and polling places more accessible, enacting the infrastructure bill, which dedicated nearly $1 billion to making public transportation and airports more accessible, and by expanding access to broadband, which is critical for many disabled people. In contrast, Trump's Project 2025 would weaken disability protections across the board. Now, the disability community, our community in this country, has faced systemic disenfranchisement for generations, from unconscionable barriers to health care, to income limits for those seeking accessible housing, to barriers to marry who you love. It can be discouraging and at times even demoralizing. And we find ourselves in a moment of deep consequence, and an election cycle where we must vote strategically to advance our struggle for basic human rights and dignity. Disability justice must be part of that intersectional conversation. Whether you are talking about reproductive rights, whether you're talking about criminal legal reform, we must affirm that Black disabled lives matter, especially when nearly half of those murdered by police have a disability. We know that our systems are deeply broken, and together we must legislate healing, justice, and accountability. That begins with honest conversation about where we stand, and intentional legislation must follow. Moreover, the COVID pandemic has laid bare the deep inequities and disparities across our country. Our community has experienced so many deep and painful losses, yet together we have fought back against deadly and discriminatory policies that would limit access to care for people with disabilities. In this critical moment, where the direction of the nation is on the ballot, we must organize, mobilize, and vote strategically to hold and secure a Democratic White House, Senate, and House. You and I know that our organizing never stops at the ballot box, but it is essential to have elected officials that believe in the core tenets of our democracy and respond to organizing pressure. We organize for a generation, not just for an election cycle. And we reject those who tell us to wait in line when it comes to long overdue policy promises. We need federal money for home and community-based services and critical SSI reform. We need housing justice that centers the disability community and free public transit that is accessible. And we need reproductive justice for all of us and living wages for our community. Now, what I've offered, what does this prove? It proves that disability justice is not just about one bucket of policy. It is a critical lens we must bring to every policy-making table. And that is why my eyes are fixed on the policies we need to advance true justice as we take on these fights together. Policy is my love language. I hope you know that you can always count on me as your sister in solidarity and your partner in the work. And I know that the Harris-Walz administration will be critical partners as well. As I close, I just want to offer a personal note. I want to thank the community for not only engaging me as an elected official to be held accountable and as a co-conspirator in the work of justice to use my platform to help advance the work, but I want to thank the community for the warm embrace that you gave me 3 years ago when I revealed that I was living with the autoimmune disease, alopecia totalis. The phones would not stop ringing from this community, welcoming me, embracing me. And there have been many a time that a DM or a text message has been a lifeline and a hope line at times when I felt overwhelmed by stares and rude comments and depressed about a transformation not of my choosing that I was trying to stand in, even if at times it felt unbearable. When I've been tempted to make myself more digestible and palatable for other people, it is this community that has emboldened me to show up fully, authentically, unapologetically, exactly as I am. Thank you. Thank you all. Stop. I just want to say, I love you and I thank you for all the times when my crown has been tilted that you have straightened it with love. But I also want to say that this room and this community, we are powerful as hell. Because the future is disabled. Thank you for what you do every day. Our work continues.
Before she leaves, I'd like to share a little something about the Congresswoman. We met years ago when we were both running to be members of Congress, and ever since we've stayed in touch, and she has actively helped me organize communities throughout the United States. And one time we were campaigning in South Carolina, and we warned her of the reception around Medicare for all. And she made it very clear that where she stood on that issue, and said, where's my button? Let me make sure other people know. People need health care. It should be affordable, and it should be a guarantee. And that is who she is, has always been that way, and never wavers from her stances on that. So just another round of applause for Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley. Adversity is not something that is out of the norm for people in the disabilities community. It's a daily practice. I don't want to call it a struggle, because if we did, it'd be hard to smile sometimes. But we deal with it. We take on things that a lot of other people could never imagine. The exhaustion that comes with pain that you deal with every single day, that may or may not be visible. If you need equipment to help you get around, how quickly you find that accessible is not quite accessible, right? from the crack in the sidewalk that jars your back because your walker hit it, to not being able to find a ramp to move your scooter or wheelchair around, to not being able to get in and out of showers and in and off and on of toilets. These are things that other people take for granted, and we deal with every single day, either in our own capacities or as caregivers. And the reality is, the majority of Americans are going to deal with this at some point in their lives. And it's not until that moment, oftentimes, that they realize the urgency of now when it comes to fixing accessibility, when it comes to fixing our healthcare system, when it comes to ensuring that people are welcome in every community. They don't feel ostracized, and they know that those of us in the community are contributors to the overall well-being of our state and our nation and our world. We are leaders, we are teachers, we are doctors, we are business owners, we are caregivers and lovers of each other. I want to thank each and every one of you for being courageous every day of your life. You inspire someone even if you don't realize it, and you deserve to clap for yourself for that. I was honored to be the inaugural chair of the DNC Disability Caucus. But I also am honored to have been elected as a state representative who has a disability that comes from my service in the military, and in short order have earned the honor of my colleagues in the Delaware House of Representatives to be elected as their House Majority Whip. The sense of urgency that we need in our state houses across the nation, as well as within the disabilities community, is strong, and it's not going to become less. My state needs my full attention to make sure that we get to a point where we can change our Constitution to ensure that the rights that we take for granted are enshrined should things go wrong. We also need to make sure that we're passing legislation that strengthens our economy, lowers healthcare costs, improves schools, makes sure that employment is real, and allows a living, not just a working life. But the Disability Caucus also deserves to make sure that the work is being done across the nation, making sure in state houses and in local government that even the definition of being disabled is updated and fully encompassing. To carry both of these torches is not something that should be done because you cannot put your full self into either one. And so today I have the honor of thanking you all for the ability to stand here and be your inaugural chair, but also to pass the baton to our secretary, who will take over as the chair of the DNC Disability Caucus, so that the DNC Disability Caucus has full-throated leadership, and the Delaware House of Representatives does as well, and that the people who are living and courageously carrying the torch of disabilities are represented and cared for from this point forward. So thank you all, and as we go forward, I will pass the gavel, symbolically, to Derek Devermont.
So thank you, Carrie. The people of the state of Delaware are extraordinarily lucky to have you, and not just the entire state, but specifically our community. So I want to thank you for stepping up to be chair in the first place. I want to thank you for all you've done, and I want to thank you for all you continue to do. And I know we've clapped for you already, but if we could just give Carrie another round of applause, please. Now, I have a lot more to say about how I'm humbled and how I'm great, but we have a special guest here who I believe probably has a lot of things planned, and I think we need to get to her. There's those who believe, and there's those who experience it, and then there's those who experience it, believe, and do something. I have the honor of introducing a Iraq War veteran, Purple Heart recipient, former Assistant Secretary to the Department of U.S. Affairs, and one of my heroes, and excuse me, sorry, getting choked up, and a senator from the great state of Illinois. Ladies and gentlemen, Senator Tammy Duckworth.
Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Chicago. Welcome to Illinois. Hi everybody. I hope you're all as fired up as I am about the history we're about to make in November. Yeah. I said we because there's one thing I know, and that's winning on election day isn't just determined by whose name is on the ballot. It's also determined by people like you. People who have 1,000 other responsibilities, yet who still show up every single day. People who are working hard to ensure that everyone knows the real progress that Democrats are making for working families across the country must continue. You know, I am so pleased to welcome you here to Chicago, in part because so much of what happened here I brought to the Senate with me. This is the home of the ASAP Act, the All Station Accessibility Program Act, which began right here with the CTA of Chicago. And this was something that happened about 5 years ago. The head of the CTA, the Chicago Transit Authority, asked me to come to this wonderful event commemorating the 30-year anniversary of the ADA, where they were going to announce that they were going to make every single transit station, public transit station in the city of Chicago completely accessible. And I said, that's wonderful. How long is that going to take? 24 months? 48 months? And they said, oh, it's a 20-year plan. And I said, wait, this is the 30th anniversary. It's a 20-year plan. So you're saying basically half a century after the passage of the ADA is when we're going to be able to access all of the stations? That's a no-go. And I said, well, what's stopping you? And he said, well, it's a budget issue. If I only have so much money and I'm mandated to buy a new train car or new brakes, then I can't fix the access issues. It's a zero-sum game. So we decided to stop making it a zero-sum game, and I introduced the legislation, which became part of the bipartisan infrastructure deal, the ASAP Act, that put money into the system so that all stations across this entire country will now become accessible to all. It's a 10-year plan, over $10 billion, and here's the deal. It's not just about wheelchair accessibility. It's about accessibility for people with vision impairments, people with cognitive impairments, people with hearing impairments, all of the above. We need all of us to have access. And the important thing about putting Democrats in charge is that you put the gavel in my hand. I am chair of the Aviation Subcommittee. And because Democrats won and because Democrats have control of the Senate, I became the chair and I have the gavel, which is why in the latest FAA bill, we were able to put so much into it for disability issues. We're holding the airlines accountable for breaking our assistive devices. We're making them post and report, self-report when they break our devices. We're making them compensate us. We no longer have to prove to them that our wheelchair was broken by their baggage handlers. If we get off a flight and the wheelchair or the assistive device is broken, it is their fault and they must pay up. All of that is in the new FAA bill. We codified the work that I was able to work with Secretary Buttigieg. He and I worked on this issue. I told him what I was trying to do. He actually did rulemaking and made it happen before I could get it passed out of the Senate and out of the House. thanks to him, the moved forward much more quickly, but then we came in behind him and codified it into law so Republicans can't reverse it in a future Republican administration. So I'm thrilled to say that we also brought home $185 million to build ramps, install elevators, you name it, for those transit systems. Let me tell you that it's been more than 3 decades since those activists crawled up the steps of our nation's capital. And we cannot rest on those laurels, and we cannot take it for granted. Every single day, the ADA is under attack. Every single day. Every single Congress, somebody comes forward with a plan that they are selling as a way to improve the ADA, but is really a way to gut the ADA. And we are going to fight back. I am tired of playing defense. I am tired of playing defense. Let's go on to offense, people. Let's go on to offense and pass more laws like we were able to do in the FAA bill and make sure that we are better able to move accessibility forward for all Americans. Here in the great city of Chicago, I love this city, but our public schools are not 100% accessible. Our kids with disabilities have to be bused. Our kids with mobility disabilities have to be bused to the few schools that are accessible. We need to fix that. We're not the only city that have that. We need to go back and look at all of those legacy buildings, all those government buildings, and they must be truly accessible. So it's time to mount up. See, I mount up on my chair, you mount up on whatever you got to mount up on. We're going to get out there and we're going to fix it. Thanks for letting me be here. Thanks for working so hard. Democrats will win, and when we do, we're going to get to work and fix it. Thanks, everyone. I almost took his agenda. That's not good. Hang on. Wheelchair is acting up. Okay, there we go.
Well, that was cool. So we have a labor panel with some amazing labor leaders, and they're going to kill me because I'm going to have to delay it a little bit because we have a very special guest here with a campaign update, Dan Cannon. Is he here? Oh, there you are. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I think we have a deck we're going to put up real quick, too. While she's getting the deck up, I'll just say it's great to be here, folks. We're just going to get this going in 1 second, and bear with us. Okay, thanks everybody. My name is Dan Cannon. I am the battleground director for the campaign here on the Harris for President campaign, Harris Walz tickets. It is really wonderful to be here with so many great Democrats in Chicago. I had the pleasure of working on the Obama campaigns in 8 and 12. And so I lived here for a year, and the memories are very good and very strong. It's great to be back. I wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to give folks a sense of where the campaign is today, and also how to stay involved, stay connected with the campaign as we move forward. I'll just say a couple things really quickly about where we are. Obviously, this campaign's been very unconventional. We've had a bit of a few bumps in the road here and there, but I think we've come out of this in incredible shape, and it's in large part because people have been engaging consistently throughout the year. We haven't been waiting to make a plan to get people engaged and getting people ready to vote and build infrastructure. We just kept working throughout the spring and the summer, and then when this incredible enthusiasm for Kamala Harris appeared, we had a place to put it. And now that enthusiasm is almost overwhelming the system. So we have more to do to build that scale and to get people involved and make something that's a community event, something that really is inclusive and drives us forward to win in November. So a couple of quick things, and I'll just give you a sense of where we stand in this race. As the battleground director, my job is to think about the states that we have to win to get to 270 electoral votes. So every day, we're looking at the polling, we're looking at the data, we're looking at our organization, we're looking at where we bring the principals to travel, the paid media, all of that. And I will tell you that the initial results of our surveys and also public data shows that we're in a strong position across the battleground states. The strength of the Harris-Walz ticket is evident. I think the strength of the organization is evident. But one thing I do not want to leave you with is the sense that this race is just on a rocket ship and we're good. Because the reality is, there are 7 states in this country that have been just exceedingly close in election after election. Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, obviously, we all talk about the blue wall a lot. Arizona and Nevada, very important. North Carolina and Georgia, very important. All of those places have had elections in the last several years that have been within a point or a half a point or even a quarter point. Incredibly close. So it takes every part of our coalition to band together and win those close races. And despite the enthusiasm, it's real. You saw the hall last night. People are so fired up for this ticket. That gives us a lot of things to work with, but it doesn't change the fact that these are going to be close elections, and we are prepared for that. I'm going to go back one second here. We've been looking at the kind of voters we need to win, and we think about both the expansion voters and our undecided voters. For us, expansion voters are those voters who may have voted for Trump previously, but have been turned off by either January 6th, or Project 2025, or the Dobbs decision, or just his general approach to politics and his mean-spirited efforts as part of the MAGA ticket. We think those folks care about reproductive rights. They care about the rule of law. They care about democracy. They certainly care about lowering costs, things that all Americans do care about. But they also care about his criminal convictions. They care about the Supreme Court's immunity decisions. They care about not putting people first and having him put only himself first, which he does consistently. We want to go after those voters and add to our coalition so there's new people coming in that help us win these close races. And then there's about 7% of the electorate who remain undecided. The thing about this group that I want to point out is they are more likely to be Democrats than not. They may be undecided, but when you look at where they live, how they move through the world, who their friends are, what their associations are, they're more likely to be modeled as Democrats, 2 times more likely, in fact. So that's not to say that they're going to necessarily come home, but it is to say that if we do the work, if we actually reach them and talk to them, we can bring them home. But the important thing there is it won't happen unless we actually do that work. If we don't actually make the outreach and welcome people in, we're not going to get them in the fold. But if we do, I'm very confident that the plan will result in a victory. I mentioned that every part of our coalition has to be part of this, and it's not lost on me that in 2020, 62% of voter-eligible adults with disabilities voted in that election, a record. That's a really huge number. We need to keep working on that. And that's not, I realize, just about how we operate as a campaign in terms of bringing people in and talking to voters. It's about the laws. It's about the accessibility. We have a voter protection and access team that is the largest we've ever had at this stage of the campaign. They think about a lot of things. They think about the election interference. They think about the lawsuits like we saw at the end of the election in 2020. They think about early voting and absentee voting. But they think about it all from the lens of creating opportunities to vote wherever you are, wherever you live, whatever your needs might be, whether it's by mail, whether it's in-person early voting, whether it's getting additional sites, whether it's sites with better access, more machines, accessible machines. These are issues they contemplate all the time, and state by state, they're making very serious plans to push county officials and municipal officials, push state officials where possible, get more funding for those sites, because I firmly believe if we create the opportunity for voters in a way that's accessible and can reach people, we can improve upon this number, and this can be the difference. In Georgia, it was 11,000 votes that separated Donald Trump and Joe Biden, less than 0.25%. In Wisconsin, 20,000 votes, about 0.5%. These are small margins, and there are plenty of Americans with disabilities who want to cast a ballot, and if they do, could very much become the decisive margin in this state, any of those states. I mentioned the campaign is designed to win a close race. We've believed that from the beginning, and the proof is in the pudding. Donald Trump has not built any infrastructure. They don't have staff and offices. I don't think he believes that he has to have a relationship with people. I think he thinks he can simply treat people like assets. Maybe an obvious point to folks, but I think it's worth noting the difference between how we want to operate as Democrats, right? We built teams in states in January and February who knew how to win their states, and then they built the skeleton, the framework of their state teams around that, and then built from there a further layer of organizers. And over time, real intentional infrastructure building, we've got more than 300 campaign offices in just the battleground states, more than 1,600 staff in those states, and an organizing program that has knocked, on track to knock 3 million doors in July and August, and that will just grow and grow and grow in the fall. So, thank you. That team is doing that work and not just doing the output, because I don't think it's just about the output. I think campaigns are about inclusion and making people feel part of something. If you are part of something, no matter where you are, where you live, or how you engage with the campaign, you are so much more likely to be invested and to carry that forward another layer or two into your neighborhood, into your family, into your community. And that's what campaigns are. They're a living organization. They're an organism. Organizational health matters to us. Trump campaign does not see that. They don't see that at all. So in Nevada, we've got 12 offices. They have one. I don't think it's staffed. It's just a building. In Pennsylvania, we've got 36 offices to their 3. In Georgia, 24 offices. They just opened their first one a month ago. They don't have the staff or the infrastructure, and they haven't built the relationships. We are trying to build community in these places so that when it's time, we now have the resources to pull people in, but also the trust to get people out there to do more themselves and engage the rest of their community. And then I mentioned the states, but I just have to say we have to be on offense in all these places. The blue wall represents, 44 electoral votes. They're very, very tight states. Wisconsin, 20,000 votes. Pennsylvania, 74,000 votes, separating us last time, both well within a percentage point. The Sun Belt, even tighter. Arizona, I think 13,000 votes. Georgia, 11,000 votes, separating it less than a quarter point in both of those places. North Carolina is the one state on this list we did not win in 2020. We lost it by 1.3 percentage points. We're going to get it this time, guys. We're going to get it. Roy Cooper is a great governor and has been a great governor in that state, so we know we can win statewide. Josh Stein is the Attorney General running for governor, is an excellent candidate. And Mark Robinson, who you may know about, is the kind of guy that says things that I don't want to say on this stage all the time. And we're going to make sure people understand that Mark Robinson is that same mega extremism that comes from Trump. It's not a split ticket situation. There is a mega ticket. They're going to know that in North Carolina. We're going to drive those suburban voters and independents to our campaign to win a tight race. It's going to be close. All 7 of these states, all of them, could be within a point, right? And the thing I want to leave you with is there's not a blue wall strategy and then like a Sun Belt strategy or a Western strategy and a Southern strategy. These are individual states. They have their own politics, their own constituencies, other candidates like Mark Robinson or in Arizona like Kerry Lake that affect the outcomes here. We think of all of them as 7 individual toss-up states, and we've got to win enough of them to win the election. But any one of these 7 could be the decisive state, which is why we're building the infrastructure everywhere to win close races. And how we're doing it. This gets to the campaign modus operandi and how we're thinking about engaging people. I don't want you to have to read this chart. It's a complicated chart. This is like a field chart of how we think about engaging all the various aspects of our coalition. I just want to put it up there because the common denominator here is we want to welcome people in the ways that fit them. So sometimes campaigns are all about door knocking, and believe me, I love door knocking. We're going to do as much of that as we possibly can. But if you want to come in and think that you can add value in an online capacity, engaging people in a WhatsApp text chain, engaging people on Facebook and social media, being part of a platform like Reach where we can share content online, or if you want to do text banking, or if you're someone who's not in a battleground state but can make phone calls and want to make phone calls into that state, we want to meet volunteers where they are and give them something to do to be a part of this campaign that's valuable and not worry so much about it's got to be doors or it's got to be calls. We will have big goals on doors and we'll hit them, but we want to bring people in, and we call this the blended organizing model. And why we think it's important, besides the fact that it creates inclusion, is that it's a way to cut through. This media world we live in is so siloed and fractured, you cannot actually assume that something on broadcast media will get to people. It's gonna be hard to break through and talk to people directly. This kind of approach that lets people talk to folks authentically in the ways they normally would in their lives is how you break through a fractured media environment. And it's, yes. One more time, I'm sorry. I bet I can. Let's try. It's not my computer, so I'm going to get some help here.
And here comes the best problem solver in the United States.
I will tell you, regardless of this, I'm happy to make sure we share this deck for folks that want it, so we can. Do we get it?
Mrs. Walz says about 5 minutes away.
Okay. This last couple
I'm
slides.
just letting you know.
Okay, thank you so much.
Take as long as you want.
Okay, great.
That's all I have to do.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine.
Oh, it's in Chrome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead. I'll just keep.
Very good. Well, I'll wrap up here and say we'll get this deck to everyone so they can have it. Obviously, thank you for that call out. But at the end of the day, again, leaving you all this fact, we have built an organization through the spring and summer that can do this job, and I believe the campaign will win if we do our job. But we have to do that work. We have to find a way to bring people in. We have to cut through and talk to those folks. And when we do, I believe very strongly we're prepared to win a close race in any one of these states, and we have to. But that really is the sum of the race at this point. Thank you for listening, and happy to take a few questions to round it out. Yes, please. I can repeat the question as well in the mic if that works. One second, folks.
I'm a big mouth. What I wanted to say is there's a large group of about almost 50 organizations in the San Francisco Bay Area and Northern California that are phone banking virtually. They have a Zoom, and everyone joins up on Mobilize, and we're using a system called Scale to Win. It is the easiest dialer I have ever used. People train on it in 10 minutes, and they're off to the races. And the DNC, what I wanted to ask you to talk about is your Slack group. It's the one, if you were on Slack in 2020 for Joe Biden, they just rebranded it. It's the same Slack, and you can reactivate it. If not, I'm sure this gentleman will give you the link to join Slack. And you can phone bank directly from that. It's the same system, the same tools, and you can call anywhere in the country certain hours of the day, or you can find a group in your area. In California, we're calling Nevada and Arizona. Same time zone, and we always work with them. This is the way we can win. You get someone on the phone, you ask them what issue is important to them, you share how that relates to you, and you have a conversation.
Thank you. I'll just say really briefly on that SAC channel, we can do a follow-up and make sure we email that resource around to everyone that wants it after that presentation. But thank you. Yes, in the middle, please.
with technology being the way it is, Trump just yesterday was in Pennsylvania spewing out lies left and right. Can we employ technology that will allow us to respond immediately and put that in some of the campaign clips that we have for the Harris effort? So, thank you.
Great question. So I think just to summarize, how does a campaign through a volunteer apparatus respond to this misinformation and disinformation and just outright lies from the Trump campaign? One of the things we want to do in these, whether it's a Slack group or whether it's another WhatsApp chain or other ways we can engage people, and we got a platform called Reach we use a lot, is you can be in that community and then have resources right there in the chat in real time, as fast as we can get them out there, that give you a context and a thing to share. Maybe it's a piece of content that's been pre-approved by the campaign you can put right out there, or even just guidance for how to talk about it. And then people can be their misinformation counterers, which is really important because the way people absorb and trust information is if it comes from someone they know and trust as opposed to something else. So everyone individually can do that really well. Let's go here, please.
Hi, Marcy Roth, and I'm World Institute on Disability, but I'm on vacation this week. On behalf of people with disabilities, we want to help you all in this process. We are a huge voting bloc that is being ignored. We need to be seen in all of the advertising. We need to be at the table to make sure that not just disability meetings are accessible, although we need to work on this one, but we can help you to get to the 70 million people with disabilities. 62% only are voting. We can help with that. Please, please let us help.
Thank you so much, and thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all. Have any of you ever met a future second lady? I haven't, but maybe we're about to. Ladies and gentlemen, the future second lady of the United States, Mrs. Walz.
Good afternoon. Hello, yay, right? Thanks so much for having me. I so appreciate being able to stop in and join you. I know you've had an important discussion, and there are so many happening, right? And how about last night? Yeah, right? Oh, wow. Wow, I still am, I'm still thinking about so much from last night, and here we're already doing important work today and going into that convention tonight. But I wanted to make sure I came over here to greet all of you and to say thank you for being here and to introduce myself just a little bit. So if you wouldn't mind, I'll just take a few minutes to do that. Some of you may know from the great introduction, my name is Gwen, and I am proud to be on Team Harris Walz. It's very exciting. Yep. I can't think of a better team than Kamala and Tim. They have both spent their careers fighting for middle-class families and actually for everyone, and thinking individually of each of us and thinking of that in a holistic way too. And those are families like the ones they grew up in. Now, they want to give everyone a chance to chase the American dream. And I think that's a really important distinction from the other side, right? Because we see people as individuals, right? And we see each and every person. And together, Kamala and Tim, they're going to fight for the future that all of our sons and daughters and children and friends and neighbors and each one of us deserve. It has been just a little bit more than a week since Tim joined the ticket. It's been a fast week. Right. And that's why I wanted to come specifically to you, to just introduce myself and to say, I wear a lot of different hats, or that's what we sometimes say, but I like to say I wear a lot of different shoes. So I don't know if you can see them, right? I'm a mom. I'm a sister. I'm a friend, a retired military spouse. Right now, it's my great honor to be the First Lady of Minnesota. Yeah, right? And I'm an educator, teacher. Yes. Any educators in the room? Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Right? Thank you for your work. Right? That's how Tim and I first met. And I just like to tell you that story a little bit. We were both teaching in Nebraska. And he taught, does anyone know what he taught? Social studies. Very good students here already. And I taught English. And we even shared a classroom. We were in a school that didn't have a lot of resources or space. So they took what was the old choir room and they put a divider just right down the middle. And on one side was his classroom and on one side was my classroom. So that was interesting. His classes, as you can imagine, were a little louder than mine. There was a lot of energy, but I liked that. And I knew right away, the first thing I knew about him, and I think he would say the first thing he knew about me, is we shared a belief that education can be transformative. Yes, right? And we saw that firsthand. I'd like to tell you just a little bit about the way Tim and I partner or work together. And it's through a story from one of our students, and his name is Waylon. And Waylon was a football player that Tim coached on his team. And he was a student that year in my English classroom. And Waylon was brilliant on the football field, but difficult in my classroom. You maybe know students like that, or were students like that, maybe. But in this case, Waylon was reading way below his grade level. And he was acting out in my classroom, and that was actually just an attempt to kind of throw us off the scent or to hide from his peers and also from me what the real issue was. But the school had a policy that a student who was failing a core class could not participate in a sport, and that was the school rule. And that's a tough rule because the thing that was really keeping Waylon in school probably was that activity. And so I thought this is going to be an issue, right? So I huddled up with Coach Walz, and we made a plan. And we talked to Waylon about it. I asked him to come and see me, and I said, Waylon, if you come into tutoring several times a week, we would do it before school or during lunch or even after school if we had time, you can keep on playing football. That's what your measure is going to be, coming in for those extra sessions, and we'll be making progress. He agreed, and he began to work hard. Waylon's reading began to improve, and he continued the tutoring even after the season ended. We saw Waylon as an individual, as a student, and that was one student and one student of many. But that's how you make a difference. Right? Yeah. Waylon and I never discussed it. He just kept right on reading. And Tim would often cross over that thin divider in our classroom before school, during lunch, or after school, and he would read with Waylon. And they would choose books together, and Tim cheered him on. And at the end of the year, Waylon had confidence both on and off the field, right? That's how Tim and I first learned to partner. It was around individuals, it was around education, and was around focusing on their strengths and also helping them improve in areas where they might want to improve as students. Waylon went on to graduate from high school, and he had a shot to succeed. He had a chance, and we're so very proud of him. Tim believes so strongly that every student and every person deserves a chance to get ahead, to determine their own lives, to make their own choices. And that is a commitment that I know Vice President Harris shares also. And most importantly, I think that is a vision that they will fight for every single day in the White House. Yep. Right? That's right. And as we build a future together, you and I and Tim and Kamala and all of the people in our states, as we do this together, we can be proud of our actions and we can be proud of what we're going to accomplish. Now, my mom, who you don't know, but you might know, right? Who's going to be here tomorrow evening. She's 86 or almost 86 and a former retired teacher who still plays the organ at church, gives piano lessons, and substitute teaches in PE on occasion. Like I said, you know my mom, even though you don't know my mom, used to say to me, Gwen, you have to do the work that is in front of you. And growing up, I thought that meant the dishes, or cleaning up my room, or practicing piano, or whatever it might be. But as I grew older and watched how my mom functioned in her own life, I recognized that that was advice about seeing the world, and about seeing individuals, and about using my own eyes and making my own decisions to improve what I thought we could do, to improve and to serve. I thought that advice was both thoughtful and actionable. And as delegates here to the convention, you already embody that advice. It's important. And so I think as we think about what our work is together, we have to ask each other and ask people back home, will they volunteer? Will they sign up for a shift? Will they donate? Will they bake bars for the phone callers? Do you all know what bars are? Yeah, okay, yeah. Will they bake bars for the phone callers? Will they be the phone callers? Will they make treats for the door knockers? Will they be the door knockers? What do they see with their own eyes? What do you see with your own eyes looking at the world in front of you to how you can make a difference in this election and in this race? And then to say that and make that happen in our states and in our country. Our lives depend on it, right? So I'm asking you to take the advice of my mom, okay? And maybe it's something you all live by too. It served me well. And to see what we can do, because this is the most important election of our lifetime, right? We say that all the time. But this is the most important election of our lifetime because elections matter. Elections matter, right? Yes, they truly matter. So I would just like to end by saying I'm very grateful for the chance to take time at your caucus meeting today. Thank you for giving that opportunity to me to introduce myself and tell you a little bit about how we think about this in our house and how I think both Tim and Kamala think about it. And I love what she says, so we're just going to practice it for just a minute. You know this. She says, when we fight, yep. All right. When we fight, we win. One more time. When we fight, we win. Okay. See you tonight. Thanks so much for your time. Thank you. Oh, that's kind. Thank you.
Well, you know it's going to be cool when the Secret Service shows up. How impressive was that? You know, it's so interesting when the spouse is as impressive as the candidate. A teacher, I was moved.